And now it's time for news from around the world. And meanwhile in Colombia, there is chaos and death, unfortunately, and predictably as a result of an effort by the government to put the sort of regressive taxes on the population that have led to similar sorts of protests in other countries in the region in the past few years. Tragically, as of right now, and this is obviously developing quickly, at least 24 people have died in the protests, hundreds more have been injured. And so I want to give you some details about what led to the protests, and a lot has developed from the initial cause of them. So although the president said that the objective of the reforms aimed at raising the equivalent of 1.4% of GDP or $4.1 billion were to stabilize the country's economy, the plan has been criticized for favoring the wealthy and placing more strain on the working and middle classes. So it is a suite of many different changes to taxation, reforms. It is in a variety of forms, both regressive. It is sort of a form of shifting of the tax burden in a way that is a sort of backdoor to austerity politics. And the population has seen through it. They've seen through the fact that they're trying to push it through during the pandemic so that if the people go in the streets, they can claim that this is unsafe for public health purposes. That is what they are doing right now. They're complaining about the fact that there's as many cases and deaths as there are, saying, how can you be protesting? Well, because the people of Colombia actually care about their future and they're not gonna let them slip important legislation through basically while being silent. Now, over the past few days, they have scrapped the bill and they're saying that they're going to be coming up with some other form of it, but the protests have already begun at that point. The people are already fired up and the opposition to these reforms has now sort of grown into opposition to a number of other issues, including you can see the lack of efforts to fight poverty, police brutality, and there has been an incredible amount of police violence towards protesters in multiple cities that thankfully international human rights monitors are making a big deal out of. And this is important. As we always try to remind you, there's a lot going on in a lot of countries, but we need to put pressure on these countries to treat their people correctly, especially in this sort of case where they're going to point towards police officers that have been injured as a justification for the violence. Anyway, it's a complex and rapidly evolving situation, but Brett, what do you think about it?
Right, they tried this horrible thing. People said that that's horrible. Canceling it won't make people be like, all right, cool, we're cool now. We're all mellow, don't worry about it. Like when you tried that horrible thing, you stopped, you apologized, you didn't even apologize, but like that's it. We're back to it. Yeah, this is.
Well, it's actually the exact opposite of some sort of apology or acknowledgement that the way they had formulated it was fundamentally wrong and the population wouldn't accept it. The president said the reform is not a whim, the reform is a must. And so they're saying we're going to work on another formulation of this. Now, there's some in-depth analysis of the political calculations of what percentage of the legislature his party actually controls, which calls into question whether they would actually be able to push through some new version of this. But that said, they definitely are trying to. And so there's a variety of ways that governments will respond to mass protests in the streets. So demonizing them, that's one way which they've been doing, trying to assert that they are being irresponsible because of the pandemic. They're doing that. They're calling them terrorists and vandals. We've seen that here in the US as well. Another way is to try to wait them out. We saw an attempt at this in India over the last year, which is you have this popular protest, you say, oh no, we're gonna back off, hoping that it will die down and that when you put it out again, it won't spring up in the same way, that you can sort of wear people down. And it is possible that in the medium or long term that will be possible. But right now, the protesters are thankfully, they seem to be aware of that strategy and they're not just going home right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good, stay there, fight for what you believe in. It's also difficult in America, and given the legacy of American interventionism in South America, like United States intervention in South America, it's tough to really tell what a protest, like who's being motivated by the American government and whether a protest is genuine. But this one, just because of who's protesting, it's pretty easy to assume that this is a genuine protest.
Exactly. And I know that Anna Kasparian is expecting to talk about this on the main show, so there'll be more details there and perhaps footage. But for now, that is the situation. Fingers crossed that the civilian death toll doesn't rise, but it seems likely at this point that that is probably going to happen.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.